Hello everyone, Maurice and welcome to Things Invest. Talk about investing, finance, professional development. For today's video, in terms only. The investment I'm going to talk about today will be Ethereum ticker ETH. First, just want to say happy Monday, everybody. Hope you had a great week so far. With respect to Ethereum, I'm recording around 9:35 a.m. on Eastern Time current this morning. It's currently trading around like the $2,100, down about 2.91%. With respect to the consecutive sell days that we've had on both Friday and Saturday due to some neutral, but leaning more towards the positive spectrum or positive media affectation, and then subsequently adjusted with the weekend affectation, the safe haven effects among a lot of public investors, subsequently kind of neutralized around like the $2,150 level. And yesterday on Sunday, because of the rebound macro affectation, we subsequently jumped up to about like the 2,000. I think close to $200 at one point, and today we kind of level off and sell off from there. And the kind of minimal sell-off that we're experiencing right now is mainly driven by two specific media affectation article that came out earlier this morning. One was really coming from an article from Cointelegraph by a writer named Adrian Coron on his negative depictions on Ethereum 2.0 upgrades. And the quote that he said in his title is basically, Ethereum 2.0 upgrades aren't the game changer that could bring more users. Right? And the other one is basically an article on a power ledger moving from Ethereum to Solana because of a cheaper, more of a more cost-efficient alternative into their value proposition. So with respect to the first one, on a synopsis of after reading on the article that was written by Adrian, and you could check it out, is on Cointelegraph by writer Adrian Coron. It was published about like 20 hours ago. It seems like the verbiage that he wrote, right? And I was trying to read between the lines on his specific adjectives around how he describes, try to summarize what he was basically talking about. Basically, is into two buckets, right? One is the long anticipation that can lead to disappointment among public investors. That's number one. And the second fundamental point is that lack of improvement, which I've kind of mentioned in consecutive paragraphs around various different angles around Ethereum 2.0 with respect to the lack of cost savings that potentially, as we shift to 2.0, with respect to the lack of energy consumptions that we will have if we were to shift to 2.0, and even talk about the user experience, the UX platform that it still needs for improvement. So overall, a lot of negative affectation, and he goes really granular and very specific. Definitely seems like he has done a lot of research. However, with respect to the wording he has put in, it's a little bit, a little bit more polarized, if you may. Obviously, has some sort of personal bias in his verbiage, which when you read something like that, it's a persuasive type of verbiage that you have to take it with a grain of salt, right? You also want to try to understand the incentive behind why is Adrian, such bearish with respect to this article, and what is his incentive, and what is his relations to the tie of the publication companies, Cointelegraph, or whoever is tapping on the shoulder to, obviously make him to write this article, right? And ultimately, I would say, despite this article being negative, I would think that, with respect to, if you think about this value proposition, Ethereum 2.0 in a SWOT analysis, right? Would you put this as a weakness? I don't think he has really mentioned anything specifically as a weakness. I think, as more of a optimistic investor, understanding the value proposition of any investments, we always want to look at the greater lights, right? We want to be optimistic about how can we mitigate these weaknesses or these threats that we have to identify, right? So I actually think of these lack thereof, if you may, is an opportunity, knowing the fact that cryptocurrencies or crypto assets as a whole, and Ethereum as a whole, is still an asset that is slowly evolving over time, right? You can't be expecting something to be built overnight or within just a couple of years for you to revolutionize the financial sector as a whole, right? So that's something that we just, we read it, we understand, we learned something from it, as some area of improvement for us as investors. It educated us, but we have to understand the perspective of being optimistic and understand there are opportunities for us to improve, to get better, to get that growth mindset that we're looking. And the other one is really just talking about, the differentiate between Solana and Ethereum, right? I think, with respect to Solana, is still relatively an earlier type of value proposition compared to Ethereum, right? So to blatantly compare the two to say one is better than the other when both of them are still growing and still improving upon themselves in a fundamental perspective. That's like saying you build a house already and you expect and you compare two houses despite the two houses are already completely built. You cannot really appraise a house or anything when it's not completely built yet, right? We are still leaning towards value proposition that we're looking for. If it was completely furnished or completely finished, we wouldn't be having these type of discussions, right? We wouldn't be thinking about these and wouldn't be this volatile either, right? I think the price sensitivity is speaking for itself, right? So something to be mindful of, despite two negative news. And I think there's a lot of gravitas with respect to the current level that we're at right now, like the $2,100 level that we're floating at. Despite floating between the 2050 and 2150, being in between the levels, we have a propensity to leap down a little bit more, like again, right, to the floor of $2,050. So despite this two negative news, I'm gonna go through a technical analysis again to see how we're reflecting going forward, right, with respect to the more influential events that we should be expecting going forward in the next couple of weeks. How should we be risk mitigating? How should we be dollar cost averaging? So stay tuned, stick around, let's make some money. Alright, so moving on to the technical analysis for Ethereum ticket ETH, I'm recording us at 9:43 a.m. on the Eastern time. We're currently trading like $2,098, down about 3.04%. And just to recap on the consecutive level of historical trends so far, ever since that rebound that we had on the 27th, we had that JP Morgan proof of stake article on adoptions on expecting Ethereum proof of stake adoption to go to 40 billion in market cap by 2025. And subsequent to that, we had the news on the $542 million spent by one unknown entity, bought Ethereum across about 133 different accounts. And subsequent to that, we had that news around the London fork expectation that's expected to debut on August 4th, right? And then more news on Goldman Sachs on stamp of approval for Ethereum, and then some other news around a U.S. Congressman Barry Moore purchasing Ethereum and Dogecoin and Cardano sometimes around May and June at a cost about like 5,000 to 75,000 per estimates. And with respect to the red candles that we see here, that was driven by the negative FOMC meeting and then the job report that we got, right? And then subsequent to that, we had the London fork news that subsequently kind of rebounded slightly, but because this is more like a supplementary type of media affectation that subsequently propelled us from here. We also got the Square news with respect to the hardware wallet that's expected to debut in the short-term future. And then as of today, as I mentioned to you guys, with respect to the two negative affectation, one was coming from Cointelegraph per my that I spoke about earlier in this video, and also with respect to the Solana versus Ethereum juxtaposition article that came out earlier today as well. So where I see the price for Ethereum going forward, so seems like we are still hovering away, right? I think across the whole equity market on just the SPY respectively, you could see we're kind of hovering away, not doing much. Nasdaq we're up a little bit, about 0.11%. So we do have a little bit of anti-correlation effect that's going on with respect to equity market, how it anti-correlates with the crypto market. With respect to Ethereum, you could see that we're struggling right now. We've been struggling for a little bit. You could see that we've been basically struggling for the last consecutive days so far, ever since on Friday, I would say. And we have been having a pretty tough time breaching the $2,050. I think at one point, at lowest, we were hitting around like the $2,066, but we never really fully got to the $50. Which is a good sign, right? Because people eye that number and they know that they do not allow Ethereum to basically break down below the 2,000, which is a good sign, right? And with respect to the upcoming affectation, we should be seeing maybe some selling pressure or maybe just kind of hovering around this level for the next couple of days. Contingent on no more Black Swan news, right? We did get 2 Black Swan news today, but despite these kind of a sandbagging type of watered down news, we're still kind of hovering at the level that we ideally want a dollar cost average at, right? So that shows a lot of substance, a lot of gravitas into this consolidation level. So I think a good level for us to dollar cost average right now would be now, actually, right? You might want to maybe wait until like the 2,000 lower level, like the $2,060, $2,075 level. I actually bought 2.5 around here, around like the $2,069 level. Do I see us to go down all the way to below 2000 again, right? It's a very substantive level that we've tested multiple times historically, right? If you look back in the past, look at a bunch of times here, right? So for us to crack through the walls, right, to go below to the 1950, that's a pretty leap down, right? And I think people are shifting more from the short-term investors to more of a long-term investor. That shows the lack of volatility despite the weekend affectation and despite these negative news that we've been having so far, right? And also on top of the fact that Bitcoin and Ethereum are slowly separating, it's becoming more of its own entity and its own value proposition going forward. That the RSI is slowly depleting right now, which is a good sign. That the MACD is slowly, crossing, more of a neutral level. So we're kind of cooling down, which is a good thing. We don't want it to be running hot. You want to have these like type of anticipatory percolations, right? And I foresee some volatility to be starting to happen on the 14th and the 15th, ideally, because of the a week ahead of the summit that we're going to be having with the BWorks summit, right? And then on the Friday and Saturday, we will have that weekend affectation. And Sunday, we should have a relatively green pump. And then we should have a relatively bullish next week, starting from 18th all the way to the 20th. And then we might see some selling pressure on the 21st, exactly on the BWorks summit day, right? And then after that, we will see what happens. I think Thursday we might, depending on the events, right, how it happens, we might rebound on the 22nd or dip on the 22nd and then rebound on Friday. But Friday and Saturday is going to be neutralized, so it's going to be kind of a neutral day. And then we're going to be expecting the FOMC meeting going forward, right? And I foresee this time is going to be a relatively similar one, right? I think we're just going to hear more news around the quantitative tightening plan, the tapering plan that's going to happen on the 28th. But it's so far out right now. We're basically 2 weeks out from now. But that's something we're gonna obviously keep an eye out on right now. But the level $2 cost average right now would be ideal at this level right now. It's just logical. It's not the best price. You could have gotten it way below at the 1700, but this is a logical and a fair price for you to get into if you think about this a long-term value proposition play going forward. All right, just to recap on all the numbers in the technical analysis, again, right, we are hovering around like the attractive and steal level at the moment right now, right? Again, with respect to the last two consecutive sell days so far, on top of the -2 news that we've had today, one with the Solana just the position, the other one with the frankly watered down sandbagging news on Ethereum 2.0 value proposition, that we still struggle to break through the $2,050, which shows a lot of substance at this level. So I think right now is the perfect time to buy in right now, in just a more of a logical perspective, right? The chart is telling you that it's logical and it's a fair price point for you to get into. So buying at anywhere around like maybe the lower $2,060 or $2,070 and dollars cost average from there would be a relatively good discount for you to dollar cost average at the moment right now, right? And with respect to corporate adoption, 20%, 9,800. All right, so that's it for today. Respect my technical analysis on Ethereum ticket ETH. Again, have a great rest of your Monday and a great rest of the week. You're probably going to see me again tomorrow, but my week is going to be relatively busy coming up. I actually have an interview coming up with CNBC to talk about the fund that I'm actually starting and working on. So it's going to be an exciting one. But yeah, feel free to ask me any questions. If you have any questions in the meantime, I'm happy to address them or further elaborate if you may. And please hit the like button, subscribe button, and the bell notification. And watch out for the next coming up. Take care.